I don't know how, but Killer 7 is somehow one of my favorite games I've ever played. There's so much to it that I don't understand and find confusing, but it remains one of the best experiences in gaming I've had in a while. It's truly a breath of fresh air as per usual on Suda51's part. It doesn't give one single shit about what a game should be, for better or worse. For those who can put up with the sheer insanity of it all will be rewarded with one of the best games the 6th generation has to offer. Target number 1 has a very deceptively normal intro cutscene where you might be fooled into thinking you're playing a game about assassins until you walk in the building and you're greeted with evil Jimmy Neutron transforming into some kind of monster.
You don't want to go any further. It's dangerous. My friends are all dead. They were all murdered by people that look like this. I have been chosen.
This is the Heaven Smile, which will be our main enemy throughout the game. I really like the designs for these guys. They have a pretty simple look, but I've always had a soft spot for the faceless hordes of enemies. They also laugh at you when they walk towards you, which makes them feel even creepier. Now, I know this might be a hot take, but this game is really weird. It's so weird to the point that I have to wonder how many people quit on the first chapter alone.
Oh my god, what is that? Oh my god! What is that?
The game is certainly strange now, but I have to wonder how people reacted back in 2005. There isn't a single thing about this game that's normal, from the gameplay to the story or the presentation. That's one of the big things that keeps people coming back, though. There literally isn't anything else like it. It's pretty light in terms of story in this area, which leaves the player focused on getting familiar with the world and gameplay of Killer 7. The gameplay is about as bare bones as it gets here. It's an on-rail shooter where you have some occasional puzzles. I actually find it very fun despite its simplicity. You of course have the 7 Smiths to play around with, which all come with different weapons and personalities. My favorite Smiths to play with are Khan and Coyote. They both make for speedy and reliable options. Khan also has some of the best quips in the game. He has such a way with words. There's not really much to talk about in the first chapter as it's fairly simple and straightforward. I did mention puzzles a while back, and like most of the puzzles in the game, they are pathetically easy. The first one is literally just lighting a candle in order from 1 to 5. It's really embarrassing to think that the first time I played this that I needed a guide. Some of them can be cryptic, especially if you haven't become acquainted with the Smith abilities. Like one of the puzzles later on in the chapter requires Coyote to slit her own wrist to access the area. The boss fight in this chapter is also something of note that I can't quite comprehend. For some reason, we're fighting someone's rejected DeviantArt OC and running around in circles. Fun fact, this boss fight is actually a reference to the manga Devilman. There's a demon that Devilman fights early on called Jinmin, which has a bunch of faces on its back. The boss fights in this game are kind of, indescribable. I wouldn't call them bad, but like everything else in this game, they are very unorthodox. This is probably the closest thing we get to a traditional boss fight, where you damage it about 3 or 4 times and that's it. What really cements this chapter as one of my favorites is the ending cutscene, where we get an interaction between Harmon Smith and the villain Kun Lan. These two really bring a lot to the table in Killer 7. It's always a joy when either of them are on the screen. Part of that is in thanks to the voice actors Dwight Schultz and Joe Lala, the voice of Kun Lan, who has unfortunately passed away. I am very sad about that because he would have made a terrific Joker if he ever got the role. It's really strange how great the voice actors are in this niche little game. In this interaction, we get the iconic Kun Lan line here, and I'm sure people who haven't even played the game are familiar with it too. There are so many great, memeable lines in this game. If you haven't fallen in love with Killer 7 up to this point, this cutscene should do the trick. Hello folks, if you're enjoying this video, it would be a great help if you considered becoming a channel member. Tier 1 only starts at 99 cents, and you'll be able to get a couple perks like getting early access to my regular videos. Thank you. Chapter 2 is split up into two separate parts, and I'm not sure why, but I don't really love either of them. I think it has to do with the setting, or maybe it's just bad memories from dying a lot in this chapter. That kind of... back up, back up, back. Oh my lord, I was not expecting that. It is very important from a story standpoint because this is where we get insight into the game's politics. Although this game is often seen as goofy and nonsensical, if you really dig into the politics and background of the game, you start to see how grim it really is. The politics of the game are fairly complex, and it's dropped into an already pretty confusing plot. It's obviously a commentary on Japanese and American relations, but I'm going to save the deep dive into politics for the later end of the video. The first part of this chapter is a far cry from Angel. Structurally, it might appear more open with some branching paths, but it's about as linear as Final Fantasy XIII. I'm starting to see some touches of Shinji Mikami's influence over here, because in each chapter it involves going through this weird and empty industrial landscape with a bunch of doors. The architecture makes no sense like the Resident Evil games. It doesn't even connect with any of the levels either. It literally is just out of nowhere. There's also this annoying puzzle before the final boss that I cannot stand in this segment. Thankfully, Harmon's interaction with Fukushima is very good, and we get one of the best lines from Harmon at the end. The boss fight here isn't really a boss, it's more of a shootout with the secretary. I mean, this lady must be packing serious amounts of blood on her because I shot her 134 times before she went down. I've always liked the second part of this chapter a bit more because it feels like there's more variety in this section. It opens up with one of the most baffling cutscenes in the game that features one of the worst Japanese accents I've ever heard in my life.
But will end up in smoke once again by the hand of the same country that first put us here.
Hey, I can't blame Matsuoka for shooting either of them because of that awful accent. This chapter has some seriously weird puzzles that revolve around some type of games. I'd assume it's symbolic of the ongoing political events or games that the nations are playing with each other. The area itself is straightforward with you climbing onto each floor of the building. You do a similar thing later on in the final chapter, which is disappointing that it has the same kind of structure. A good thing about this chapter, though, is it does balance out its simplicity by allowing the player to test out other types of smith abilities. I think almost all the smiths in here have some use, including Kevin, who apparently can turn invisible. There's another baffling scene in this chapter where we see a pair of Japanese and Americans against each other in a game of Mahjong. I personally can't make heads or tails of this scene, but it highlights the antagonistic relationship between the US and Japan. Now, the boss fight at the end of this chapter is absolute nonsense. I don't know if I would have been able to figure the solution out without watching somebody else do it the first time. You have to shoot the tie of one of the politicians, and then the other guy tries to adjust the tie, and you have to shoot his brains. And this happens while they shoot brain missiles at you, and then you have to shoot the other guy's brain. It's complete nonsense. It also ends with a cutscene where I feel like it rings pretty true today, with Mills commenting on people's apathy to political strife.
What's sad is that we've gotten used to this. I mean, our senses. That's pathetic.
That doesn't necessarily mean that we're not human.
Okay, now you're not helping.
Chapter 3. At this point, we've encountered all sorts of wacky characters, but none of them come close to the great Andre Almeida, who instantly solidifies himself as the best character in gaming.
Oh my God! I can't hold back! Oh God! Oh, I'm coming! Oh! Yeah!
Well, I guess I better prepare for the mission. Let's go see how Harmon's doing. Now, despite what I've shown you, this is a really fun chapter, and I think it's a lot of people's favorites too. There's a lot of good scenes, like Garcian's flawless logic as always.
T-shirt. Nobody wears a t-shirt that says Texas Bronco, except in Texas.
And this area is pretty fun to explore. The cutscenes are also animated in a different style than we've seen thus far. I'm not sure who the studio is behind this animation, but it's awesome. I like how each chapter has its own set of animations. It makes it feel distinct from one another. The presentation of this game is a huge reason as to why people love it. I suppose I should also bring up the remnant psyches of this game. They are apparitions that give us ample hints and items. Some of them also give you information on the story. I usually skip most of these though, as they do get kind of grating to listen to after a while. They are entertaining the first couple of times, but they speak in a very repetitive way, like Iwazaru or Susie. Travis is the one I usually bother with the least, especially in this chapter. This chapter is nice and spacious, so you have plenty of room to walk around in and try out your smiths. One thing that does suck about this game is you don't have very much balance with the usage of each smith. I rarely see people using Kaede or Kevin for their oddities, and Mask is even worse because he can't even collect blood. I spent most of this chapter as Khan because of how fast he could move through the longer stretches of areas. It's such a quirky level that it's hard not to love. It even ends on a heartbreaking cutscene. Rip Almeida, you were taken too soon.
Walk down the path of life. Don't succumb to weakness. Take the big risks.
Rest assured, Master Almeida, I will watch over this town. Our way of life stands eternal. May peace rest with our great Almeida, our Messiah.
The name's Andre Almeida.
Encounter is another banger of a chapter thanks to how despicable our target is. I've already covered about how much of a piece of shit he is in a previous video, but man, he never fails to make me pay attention when he's on screen. Alistair Duncan delivers a sinister performance here, and if you're not familiar with him, he's also voiced Senator Armstrong. He's got quite a bit of range and it's impressive. This chapter is once again split into two parts, and out of all the targets to receive two parts, I'm glad Curtis gets his. He's a stark reminder of the bleak underbelly in the world of Killer 7. I really like how deceptive these chapters are with seemingly innocent aspects to them. In the first part, it's an amusement park that's anything but amusing. I need to talk about some of the heaven smiles that are starting to show up in this chapter. We get several new types of smiles thrown at us, as long with recurring ones, and it gets a little annoying. The pace feels like it grinds to a halt at times when I have to stop and switch out the right Smith to kill a Heaven Smile. This amusement park is disorienting. It feels like that one scene in Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory when Willy starts going insane. I think the most memorable thing in this chapter that happens is our introduction to the character Ayame Blackburn, which, of course, is Blackburn's adopted daughter. She's a complete and utter enigma in this game. I've asked other people in this community why she's dressed the way she is, and the answer always comes up blank. Hopefully, she's dressed that way due to her own volition as opposed to Curtis's. Her first fight is not so bad as long as you use Mask, but her second fight is something that we'll be getting to shortly. Part 2 is so awesome. I love the environment with it being not one, but two mansions. This piece of shit really has made it out in life, just like a lot of assholes in real life. The soundtrack here is also pretty pleasant and smooth. It's a nice contrast to Blackburn's true nature. This section always feels like it flies by for me, even though I did die here a lot on my second playthrough. The majority of it came through the second fight with Ayame. This is probably the hardest boss fight in the game. It feels like towards the end it's a complete crapshoot to whether you hit her or not. Curtis's boss fight isn't really hard, but it mentally screws with you with its usage of sounds and visual cues from the pigeon. It feels far more intense and fitting than any standard shootout boss fight would. His interactions with Dan here are gold. There's a lot of history between these two that hasn't been shown in the final game due to being cut. If you want to check that out, see my video on my second channel. The way this chapter ends is also so harrowing to see Curtis's victims hanging on the wall. It makes it feel like our victory over him is completely hollow. This is seriously dark stuff for a game. I mean, how many games would even dare to approach such a risque subject like human trafficking?
Life, wonderful indeed.
Alter Ego is considered to be the filler chapter, but it's still pretty enjoyable. Man, does this chapter make me want a Killer 7 anime. I mean, look at how cool these cutscenes are. Thankfully, this chapter is a lot lighter in subject matter than Encounter was. It revolves around a group of comic book heroes called the Handsome Men that end up being real and carrying out assassinations. This chapter feels eerily reminiscent of the Billy Bat manga by Naoki Urasawa. It feels disconnected from the rest of the story, but it's got plenty of things to make up for it. The Dominican Republic was one of my least favorite places to explore when I played this game the first time, but it's really grown on me. It starts off on a bad foot with this maze-like section, but eventually opens itself up as the level progresses. The cathedral part is pretty cool, and it has a ton of Heaven Smiles to cut through. The area itself reminds me of the Blob, especially because you end up collecting a bunch of color palettes from a Wazuru. It feels like a fever dream, not helped by the bizarre plot. To top it off, we finally meet the creator of the Handsome Men comic named Trevor Pearl Harbor. I guess the last names Hiroshima and Nagasaki were taken. There's something really funny about all this stuff that was cut from the game, and then we get this silly chapter about Power Ranger knockoffs. I guess you could say that this chapter technically is split into two parts because you do head back to your trailer, but the boss fight is basically nothing. It's rigged so you can't really lose to my knowledge. Might I add the theme song for this is an absolute banger. Masafumi Tadaka is really brilliant in this game as he shifts through multiple genres with ease. The ending of this chapter is so abrupt and makes me feel dissatisfied every time. Maybe it would have been cool if they did expand upon the part and let us explore New York more in depth. I got a feeling that something got left out during this part. It also feels really strange that this is the chapter before the final one. So, in case Killer 7 didn't seem extremely complicated enough, Smile really puts the cherry on top. Our visit to the Union Hotel is pretty simple, and I don't really feel like there's too much of note here. I do like the design of this place with it having different colors on each floor.
I'm afraid our time is up. Good day.
Now, the second part of this chapter has a lot of juicy tidbits in it. It's honestly one of my favorite parts of the entire game outside of some small problems. The school in this segment really scares me. It feels like one of those dreams where you're alone in school and nobody's there. On top of that, we get these tapes from Hulbert, who reports on his investigation throughout the school. It creates a really eerie atmosphere. I suppose this is classified as a horror game by some people, and it does have a fair amount of disturbing content, but this is the closest thing I've come to by being scared the whole game. The pace of this level really comes to a screeching halt by the end. Luckily, we get one of the best cutscenes in this game with our target Benjamin Keene. By the way, his wiki entry is pretty funny. The rest of this level is a complete slog though, as it's just putting in password after password. The terminal segment at the end is just awful. I wish they allowed you to use your keyboard on this part for the PC port. I don't know why they didn't think of that. Before we wrap everything up in a bow, we revisit the Union Hotel. This time we get flashbacks of all the murders of the Smith Syndicate. Some of these are downright brutal. Literally, what is wrong with you, Garcian? Or I guess I could say Emir now that the truth is out there. The story is once again given a deeper layer of complexity that will probably just have people confused. I mean, most people that have gotten to this point were probably just shrugging everything off. Or at least that's what I was doing the first time I played it. I would strongly recommend multiple playthroughs of this game and some videos on YouTube to help you understand it a bit better. There is a sliver of the chapter left by the name of Lion, where we once again get to play as Amir, and this time he has shiny green eyes. I'd assume this is just an artistic representation that he's fundamentally changed as a person. Like he's in an awakened state now and he knows the truth. There really isn't much to this segment outside of the ending that you get to choose. It doesn't really feel like a win either one you choose. It's not only revealed that Kun Lan was a Wazuru the whole time, but he and Harmon are revived the next 100 years, making the entire ending of this feel even more hollow. Now, I would like to attempt to discuss the politics of Killer 7. There's a lot of this game I don't understand, maybe even most of it. but I have a personal interpretation of the political commentary. The politics of Killer 7 seems to be very grim. One of the most interesting conversations in this game is with Harmon in Fukushima. Toru says that politics are filled with actors and stages. They only pretend to be politicians. Throughout this game, we also see this as well, where many characters are putting on some type of front. For example, Almeida City, and Curtis Blackburn to some extent. Although he's a deplorable scumbag, if you look around his pristine and lavish mansion, it would seem like it's opposite to his nature. Of course, you have the school, which is a front for the elections of the country. I mean, even our main character, Garcian, is not what he seems. It's a deep dive into the overall nature of politics and maybe even the human condition itself. It might just be that people and politics are inherently deceitful, like it's a part of our nature. It almost seems that it's hinted that way with the revival of Kun Lon and Harmon. There's a cycle of violence and corruption that's innate. Kun Lon and Harmon are symbolic of this never ending struggle of power and dominance. In the world of politics, it is often more important to look a certain way than act a certain way. They might publicly state they want something or believe in something only to contradict that in a myriad of ways. At the beginning of chapter 2, the narrator talks about several ways the world had changed, but in reality, it's just more of the same. Kun Lon and Harmon, I think, are aware of this more than anyone else. That's why they treat political landscapes like a game. Kun Lon says it best when he says, "The world doesn't change, all it does is turn." Killer 7, for as much as I don't understand it, I always find myself coming back to it. It's a puzzle that only grows more complicated as you solve it. Each discovery I find only brings more questions. It's certainly an experience that will never be replicated. It might not be for everybody, but it's certainly a game for me. It's hard to argue that the gaming industry would be less interesting without figureheads like Suda and his team working on these games. For that, I thank them, and I also thank you, viewer, for your time. Until next time.